Masiapato, Deputy Commissioner for Operations, General Chilembe, Deputy Commissioner responsible for corporate services, Madam Tupane, all Assistant Commissioners, Deputy Assistant Commissioners, Commandant who are with us, the media at large, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. It was in this very room on the 10th of April where the Commissioner outlined border management operational plan for the festive season. In his plan, or in the plan, he also outlined some technologies that we are going to employ during the operations. Technologies such as the drones as well as the push-to-talk. So we decided that as a culture that we normally employ, that we need to come back and provide you with a report of how well we have implemented that plan that we shared with you on the 10th of April. I'm going to ask Madam Tupane, the Deputy Commissioner responsible for corporate services, to come and give us some word of welcome and also introduce the Commissioner for Border Management Authority. Madam Tupane.
To the Commissioner and CEO of the Border Management Authority, the Deputy Commissioner for Operations, Major General David Chilembe, Assistant Commissioners in our midst and Deputy Assistant Commissioners present here this morning, the Border Management community, members from the media, several media houses today here, ladies and gentlemen, a warm morning. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you at this important briefing where we will be presenting, as Dr. Luengo indicated, our report on the work that we had executed in the past few weeks. Allow me to express my sincere gratitude to each one of you for making time to join us this morning on a public holiday. Your continued partnership and support and interest in the work of the BMA is deeply valued, and we work together to secure our country's borders and safeguard the well-being of its citizens. We gather here this morning to reflect on an operation that demanded the heightened levels of vigilance, collaboration and resilience. The Easter period traditionally presents heightened movements of people and goods across our ports of entry. It also brings with it increased risks, which require strategic and coordinated responses from the BMA and our partners, which manifest in attempted illegal movement through the ports and the vulnerable segments of our borderline. This period of heightened movements through our borders come as a critical test on the BMA's maturing capabilities, resilience and collective commitment to maintaining the integrity of South Africa's borders. Without wasting any time, I wouldn't want to belabor the point by trying to introduce to you someone who has become so familiar, and thanks to the media, I don't think there is anybody in this country at this moment in time who doesn't know the Commissioner and CEO of the Border Management Authority. And this is through the collaborative work that we do with our partners in the sector, but particularly with you, members of the media. Allow me to invite the Commissioner to the podium to come and share with us the successes, the achievements, the challenges encountered, and the lessons we have gathered to strengthen our future operations and sustain our agility during the off-peak period as we continue with our day-to-day operations. Commissioner, you are welcome to address us.
the Deputy Commissioner for Corporate Services, Madam Jane Tupana, the Deputy Commissioner for Operations, General David Chilembe, retired, the Assistant Commissioners and Deputy Assistant Commissioners present, the entire border management community, members of the media, South Africa at large, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today marks just a day after South Africa celebrated 31 years of freedom, a moment to reflect on the progress we have made since the dawn of democracy. As the Border Management Authority, we stand privileged to contribute in the preservation of our democracy through the effective implementation of our border management protocols. It is generally accepted that a secured jurisdiction provides the foundation upon which economic growth and individual aspirations can thrive. In this sense, border management does play a critical role in securing the countries for the preservation of our freedom, as this plays a central role in the sustenance of our society. We are gathered here today to receive a report on the implementation of the 2025 Border Management Easter Operational Plan. This plan was executed for a period of 10 days from the 15th of April 2025, and that was on a Tuesday, to Thursday the 24th of April 2025. This year's operations align with the previous year's operation that it has a similar timeline of 10 days, each commencing on a Tuesday in a particular week and ending on the Thursday the following week. The 2025 Easter operation marks the third Easter operation carried out by the Border Management Authority as an independent law enforcement authority, which is meant to facilitate and manage the legitimate movement of persons and goods in and out of the Republic of South Africa. The implementation of this plan was overseen by members of the Border Technical Committee of Directors General, the Interministerial Consultative Committee of the ministers responsible for border management, chaired by Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Leon Schreiber. It was also overseen by members of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs under the chairship of Mr. Musa Chabani. For contextual purposes, it should be emphasized that the BMA officials, even in this period, were still responsible for the implementation of immigration functions, port health functions, environmental as well as agricultural biosecurity functions, including access control, as well as general law enforcement functions at the ports of entry, 71 of them, as well as the border law enforcement area. In this Easter period, the BMA executed one of its most extensive deployments to date across all the 71 ports of entry. With enhanced visibility, joint law enforcement operations, and technological enforcement through drone surveillance as well as body-worn cameras. The implementation of this plan has effectively been supported by all of our key strategic partners. Among others, those are the South African Police Service, the South African Revenue Service, the South African National Defence Force, the Road Traffic Management Corporation, the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development, SANPAX, SANRAL, as well as the Special Investigative Unit, whose role in this instance had been to assist us in terms of the implementation of proactive measures for the purposes of dealing with border fraud and corruption across our ports of entry through the implementation of awareness programs. Additionally, the extensive deployment of provincial as well as local traffic law enforcement officers across all corridors leading to the ports of entry contributed to the maintenance of law and order on the corridors and within the 10-kilometer radius from the respective ports of entry. This kind of collaborative work sends a clear message to those who typically engage in lawless behavior to understand that the authority of the state cannot be undermined. As such, no major road blockages were reported on key corridors leading to our major ports of entry. Here we talk about major corridors such as the N1 to Beit Bridge into Zimbabwe and to the continent, N11 corridor into Groblersdal Bridge, port of entry into Botswana, N4 into Libombo, port of entry into Mozambique, R47 road or corridor into Kopfontein, which lead into Botswana, N17, which lead into Oshuk, port of entry into Eswatini, as well as R26 that leads to Maseru Bridge into Lesotho. This time around, we did not experience any, what we call, blockage on the road, primarily because of the great work that has been done. And we really appreciate the sterling work that has been done by the traffic officers in the respective provinces who continue to partner with the BMA, particularly in the corridors as well as the 10-kilometer radius into the respective ports of entry. Now, we want to emphasize that the introduction of surveillance drones as well as the body-worn cameras has been a game changer for border management work, earning praise from members of the intelligence community for its clear as well as measurable impact. The technology had also enhanced collaboration amongst border law enforcement stakeholders at the key ports of entry, where joint response teams work seamlessly based on the real-time detections of illegal movement. Now, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to present the 2025 Easter report, as it were. Let's then start with the statistics around the movement of persons. We want to start by indicating that the movement data in this particular instance has been sourced from our key two systems for recording the movement of persons, and those are the biometric movement control system as well as the enhanced movement control system. These numbers should be understood in the context that we did extend some of the operating hours at some of the critical ports which do not normally operate on a 24-hour basis. In this 2025 Easter period, we registered about 1,057,063 movements across all our 71 ports of entry. This is an increase of 8% compared to the 2024 Easter period, where we registered about 974,729. This upward trend highlights the growing demand for cross-border travel, particularly in the post-COVID period. Despite the high volumes of travelers across all the three modalities of air, land, and sea, all measures as well as contingency plans that has been implemented and put together by the Border Management Authority and its key stakeholders effectively enabled us to manage the flow, ensured operational stability and traveler safety throughout this 2025 Easter period. Of the 1,057,063 travelers, OR Tambo, as usual, facilitated the majority of the travelers at 220,339, which is a 9% increase just for OR Tambo compared to the 199,873 movement of 2024. The Libombo port of entry facilitated around 161,457 travelers, which is a 14% increase compared to the 2024 movement of 141,690. Fixback port of entry to Lesotho recorded a 31% increase of travelers in the 2025 Easter of 72,522 movement compared to the 55,519 of the 2024 Easter period. Interestingly, Beit Bridge became the third busiest port. They facilitated around 122,228 travelers, but it is a decrease of 16% compared to the 2024 movement of 141,281. Further, even Cape Town International Airport registered a 9% decrease by facilitating only 85,631 travelers compared to the 93,012 travelers they facilitated in 2024 Easter period. These figures demonstrate a dynamic nature of border movement patterns and the need for adaptability, data-driven strategies to effectively manage volumes and operational capacity across the South African ports. In facilitating the above movements as the Border Management Authority, we processed about 64,500 light vehicles, which were thoroughly searched as part of our routine and risk-based inspections. About 14,410 freight vehicles underwent detailed searches to mitigate risk associated with the smugglings as well as the movement of illicit goods. About 2,378 buses were processed and the passengers were accordingly screened. About 3,114 taxis as well as 2,804 informal transport operators, also known as Malaysias, were searched for full compliance to the cross-border movement protocols. In addition, 899 trucks were subjected to weighbridge inspections to check for load compliance to deter any smuggling. At the aviation modality, 1,446 flights were cleared by the BMA officials. About 192 vessels were officially cleared for entry and or for exit, and of which 27 of those were processed through the off-port limit mechanism, where crew changes were facilitated whilst the vessels has been stationed at deep sea without having to dock at the port. Let's then move to talk about the interception of illegal movements across the ports in this particular period. Just in the period of 10 days, we have been able to intercept and apprehend a total of 6,253 persons who were attempting to enter and or exit South Africa illegally. This is an increase of 61% compared to the 2024 Easter Operation interceptions, which were sitting at around 3,841. Of these 6,253, about 4,795 of them were undocumented. And of course, about 1,059 were undesirables, and 403 were found to be inadmissible for various reasons. And some of those reasons were people with fraudulent visas, or they just failed to produce the yellow fever certificates while they were coming from yellow fever infested countries. Even in this 2025 Easter period, a consistent pattern of top 3 nationalities which continue to undermine our immigration laws remains the Zimbabweans at 2,019, followed by Basutus at 1,921, and then followed by Mozambicans at 1,143, and the remainder of 1,170 were shared amongst the Swatis and other nationalities. All those intercepted without documents were fingerprinted. They were declared undesirable for 5 years and got deported to their respective countries, with the exception of the facilitators. This increased interception of 61% can be attributed to the deployment of high-tech surveillance drones as well as the body cameras. In addition to the 6,253, about 112 individuals were arrested at the ports of entry and or at the border law enforcement area for various reasons. And these particular ones were not deported, but were mainly handed over to members of the South African Police Service for further processing. The majority of these individuals were actually facilitators of illegal activities around the port of entry and were therefore charged for aiding and abetting according to Section 49(2) of the Immigration Act. This is one thing that we have started focusing on as the Border Management Authority, particularly being assisted by the drones, to be able to identify the facilitators, make sure that they get arrested, they do not get deported, but they had to face the full might of the law on the South African side, because they are the ones that facilitate illegal migration into South Africa, and that is the focus going forward. Working in close collaboration with these drone technology operators, together with the real-time capability of the push-to-talk communication technology, The response teams operated more efficiently along the vulnerable segments as well as the border law enforcement area along the borderline. This approach enabled instant tracking, tracing, as well as the interception of illegal movement of persons and goods. During this Easter period, 83 joint operations were conducted with all other critical law enforcement authorities. 59 joint roadblocks were activated for screening vehicles and enforce regulations along the key corridors. Additionally, over 1,141 vehicle patrols as well as 1,183 foot patrols were conducted at the hotspots areas within the port of entry as well as the border law enforcement area just in these 10 days of Easter operations. Let's then move to reflect on the general law enforcement work. During this Easter period, the border guards successfully intercepted 4 motor vehicles and 1 motorcycle which were attempted to be smuggled out of South Africa. A 22-seater minibus or midibus as well as a sedan passenger vehicle were impounded at Beitbridge Port of Entry after the vehicles were used for aiding and abetting illegal migration. All these were handed over to the South African Police Services detectives for their further processing. Further, 5,181 kgs of cannabis to the value of 129,550 was confiscated and handed over to customs for further processing. 8 passports endorsed with fraudulent stamps were confiscated at Libombo Port of Entry. Other interceptions include 879 items of counterfeit alcohol, 3 bales of banded clothing and 50 pairs of counterfeit shoes. 34 boxes of counterfeit cigarettes were intercepted as they were being smuggled into South Africa, with smugglers using several routes as we have identified them near the Libombo Port of Entry as well as the Beitbridge Port of Entry. To date, more than R1 billion worth of illicit cigarettes have been intercepted in various ports of entry by the border guards across the country from the 15th of April in 2022. Regarding port health specialized functions, just in these 10 days, our port health specialists intensified their screening of travelers for infectious as well as for communicable diseases, as well as the inspection of health-related goods across the port of entry. In this regard, over 215,585 travelers were screened, 836 flights were disinfected, and 60 units of illegal skin lightening products were confiscated. Given the outbreak of measles in Zimbabwe, the port health specialists continue to be on high alert across all the various ports of entry and are implementing heightened health screening measures to prevent the potential spread of the disease into South Africa. When coming to agricultural and environmental biosecurity specialized function, our biosecurity teams consisting of the K9 units, inspectors, animal health technicians, and veterinarians enforced compliance within terminals and border law enforcement area along the borderline. About 3,043 kgs of non-compliant regulated agricultural products at various ports of entry were confiscated, and these include medicinal herbs, wands, and prohibited food items. This illustrates the persistent threat of our food safety as well as our agricultural economy. When it comes to counter-corruption measures, we just want to indicate that just in the 10 days of these operations, 2 immigration officials were arrested at Beitbridge for collaborating with facilitators attempting to allow the movement of undocumented individuals into or entering into South Africa illegally. Following the launch of the Border Management and Immigration Anti-Corruption Forum, together with the Special Investigating Unit, we have started with the awareness campaigns across the various ports of entry to ensure that officials understand the dangers of being involved in corrupt as well as basic fraudulent activities across the ports of entry. More critically, facilitating people entering the country without requisite documentation. In conclusion, during this period, the BMA officials also imposed 38 penalties to non-compliant conveyancers, mainly buses as well as airlines, to the value of 947,300. These are the conveyancers who have been found to be bringing people into the country without requisite documentation. In this instance, you will be aware that any conveyancer that attempts to bring anybody into the country without requisite document, they are liable to pay 15,000 per each passenger that they are bringing into the country, as it were. Despite significant environmental and personnel-related constraints, I am pleased to report that through joint efforts, the 2025 Easter operations, we consider them to have been successful within the context of the planning that we have done and the implementation of the plan, as it were. We maintained the integrity of our borders, we protected public health, we generated some bit of figures for the state on the basis of those conveyancers who were not complying. We maintained the integrity of the borders, and of course, on that basis, we can indicate that the authority will continue to build on the successes of this Easter operation as we prepare for the upcoming peak periods. In this instance, we are looking forward and we are starting to plan very hard for the G20 summit that is going to be held in this country in November. And of course, that will lead us into the 2025 December as well as 2026 January festive operations. We are going to be putting plans together for those particular peak periods, and we should be able to also give a report in terms of how we have been able to do the implementation thereof. The lessons learned, intelligence gathered, as well as partnership strengthened during this deployment will feed directly into our long-term strategic posture, particularly in view of the fact that this work can not only be done by the Border Management Authority as an entity by itself, but it has to be effectively implemented with the collaboration with various partners within the value chain of law enforcement and other critical stakeholders in the justice crime prevention environment. I would like to commend every law enforcement official as well as our partner departments who played a role in this period, even those who played critical roles behind the scene. I especially thank all the BMA officials as well as all our frontline border guards across all the specialized functions, whether it's immigration, whether it's health, whether it's agriculture, whether it's environmental, and the rest of the team for their tireless efforts, professionalism, and unwavering commitment to our national mandate of securing borders for development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for that detailed report. We will then go straight to questions and answer session. And then I know I'm speaking to the converted. When you ask question, I will please request you to give us an indication of the media house that you are representing, and then you will then ask that particular question. The Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioners will be writing those questions so that they are able then to respond. Anyone who want to start? You can go ahead, Katlego.
From Newsroom Africa. Thank you, Commissioner, for that report. Were there any instances of trafficking as we saw in previous years? And in terms of when you found someone undesirable or they were trying to come into the country unlawfully, was there a process of deportation? Was that a multidisciplinary approach in returning people to where they come from?
Thank you very much, Katlego. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Theodore Michelle, ENCA. I just want to ask about the drones. What exactly was the impact? I know you touched on it, but what exactly is the impact compared to previous years when the drones were not there? What difference do we see that the drones are making? And just in terms of the technology, is there anything that you have spotted that maybe you would like to improve or add to the technological interventions in the border management?
Thank you very much for that question. Anyone who wanna ask the third question? I think we should respond to those two questions, Commissioner. If there are any questions after you have responded or any follow-ups, we'll then have to manage that. Commissioner?
Yeah, no, let's appreciate the questions as raised. Katleho, you see, the issue of trafficking, as you will know, is a very complicated matter. It is a matter that we take very much seriously as the Border Management Authority, and of course, working with the rest of the key stakeholders. You will know when we have instances of trafficking, particularly involving children as well as the vulnerable people, whether it's the elderly and people that are vulnerable, as it were. We work very closely with the Department of Social Development. You will be aware that we have created the partnerships at the national level, but we have also enhanced those partnerships even at the various provincial platforms. So in instances where we pick up a minor, for example, who is fairly trafficked, we are able to take them and engage with the Department of Social Development and be able to make sure that they are actually taken care of. But we just want to indicate that in this particular period of these 10 days, we did not have an instance where any minor, for example, or a child was identified to be being trafficked. And on that basis, we did not necessarily do much of any handover to social development. However, there have been people that were intercepted. I will say mothers that were intercepted, that were actually traveling with children, as it were. And in those particular instances, we processed them for deportation. And as we processed them for deportation, as you will know the protocol, we then handed over into the immigration officers of the adjacent country to make sure that they are also verified that indeed this particular mother is traveling with this as their child. And on that basis, we have no reason to separate those children from their parents, but we had to get them deported. All of those processes were actually adhered to, and those particular individuals were accounted for in the number of 6,000 that we've spoken about. There were children, there were mothers, but they were effectively deported accordingly. And of course, the process, as we always articulate, is that we had to make sure that those particular people are actually fingerprinted. We have to put them in our system as being the undesirable so that they cannot be able to re-enter the country for the next 5 years. So that is a process that we actually adhere to. So when we do deportations, we do not just send people back per se, but we do a process where we hand them over officially into the adjacent country. Let me also indicate, you will be aware that when you intercept, for example, a Pakistani national at a border with Mozambique, you cannot deport a Pakistani into Mozambique because it's not Mozambican. In those particular instances, when we intercept a nationality who is not from the country that is adjacent, we take that particular individual, we then handed them over to the Immigration Inspectorate inland under the Department of Home Affairs. They take those particular individuals into Lindela, and then they will follow a process where they involve the embassy of that particular nationality and then handle the issue of deportation. As you will always know, they always do that all the time. And that is basically the essence. So that is effectively how the Easter period had actually unfolded. If you compare with the January-December period, there it becomes very much complicated, and of course in this particular instance we did not have much of those issues. So indeed this is a collaborative work. We work with the rest of the stakeholders on these particular issues. There are global protocols and conventions that we have to comply to, and that is why we then take this part of the work very much serious. Now, in terms of Marcelo's question, the drones have had a very serious impact. By the way, the impact of the drones cut across. If you think financial, for instance, or let me simplify it and say, if you make a drone, you basically put water gas into the land cruisers, and they literally burn fuel, or they burn diesel, literally driving up and down from vulnerable segments to the other, with the view of looking for a possible person who might be trying to enter, or even to exit the country. That's a great mistake. So basically, we are just burning fuel for actually intercept the individual. So that is the reality. then becomes the difference is, when you then have drones, you do not have to be moving around in the dark. We then deploy the drones on the sky. And after we put the drones on the sky, what effectively happens is, we are then able to then communicate with the border guards on the ground through the push-to-talk devices that they will be having, and of course being assisted with the body horn cameras, and be able to tell them there are 10 people we can see, they're actually trying to enter the country illegally in this particular geolocation, which the system is able to then give them that particular area, and therefore they drive particularly to that particular area and they're able to do the interception. So that's the first thing that we want to indicate. Now, when you then ask, what is the impact of the drones? Last year, in 10 days, we intercepted around 3,000. This year, we talk about having intercepted over 6,000. So that automatically demonstrates the 62% we are talking about, or 63%. That is a demonstration of the impact of the drones, because it was targeted interception. But more importantly, one thing that we've always struggled with when we do the interceptions, we've been doing the interception to the extent that you couldn't identify the facilitator, which practically means that you intercept 10 people. When you have intercepted the 10 people, you ask them, who is the facilitator? They will never tell you who the facilitator is. And guess what? We deport all of them. And obviously, out of the 10 you have intercepted, maybe there are 3 facilitators. After you deport them, 2 hours down the line, they are back into their business of facilitating illegal migration. Now, this time around, what is the biggest impact of the drones? We talk about 112 people that have been arrested, not necessarily intercepted and deported, but arrested. What does that mean? It means that these are the people that actually had to be taken to the police in South Africa, and they have to be charged for Section 49(2) for aiding and abetting. We could not be talking the way we are talking today last year in April, because we did not have the drones. So what the drones enable us to do is, when we put it on the sky, we are able to see the guy who's leading the fellows in the bush. We are able to see the person communicating with people on the phone, and we are able to zoom on that individuals and make sure when the interception happens, the border guards on the ground are made to understand who the facilitator is. So the facilitator is then dealt with differently. And that is the impact of the drones. So from where we are sitting now, we are saying the issue of the drones is a game changer. But more importantly, because they enable us to be able to arrest the facilitators, the more we take facilitators out of the value chain, is the more we'll start having some impact, because the vicious cycle has been continuing forever. We deport people in the morning and they come back in the afternoon. We deport them again, they try the following day in the morning, and it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. And they are being facilitated by these individuals that we are actually arresting. You will also be aware of what we then reported when we were on the ground in Libombo, for instance. Some of the facilitators will communicate with the taxis, where they tell the taxi people that we actually have, I have 15 here, come through on the N4, come through on the N1. The guys are here, come through, and then you will have a full load. And when the person actually bring the taxi, they run into the taxi is full, and then the facilitator gets paid, and the people are facilitated. In those instances, we identified those taxis, we confiscated the taxis, and we arrested the taxi drivers. And we still want to call upon any South African in particular, they should not use their personal vehicles for this enterprise, because it is an illegal activity in view of Section 9(2) of the Immigration Act. They will be arrested and they will be charged for aiding and abetting. And that is a very serious crime. And I know people actually are really making money in the process. I mean, as we said the other day, to cross Limpopo River within that boat, you pay 400 rands. And by the way, that is like within probably 2-3 minutes, 400 rands gone. To be able to be facilitated illegally from Beitbridge to Johannesburg, you pay around 2,000. So it is a lucrative enterprise, and that is why we want to deal with the people that facilitate the activity, as it were. What is it that we can improve? Michelle is asking in terms of other issues beyond technology. A lot of things that we need to improve. You will remember, as the Border Management Authority, being 2 years old, we are dealing with something that had literally been rolling for the past 30 years, and that's a fact. So the environment is very much in trouble from an investment point of view. Part of the issues that we need to achieve around the issues of improving the work is to bring as much technology as possible. One of the key issues is to make sure that we have very powerful bandwidth in terms of our processing, as it were. Some of our ports are in very much isolated areas where the network coverage is very low. So part of what we need to be doing is to be able to make sure that we actually bring in better coverage and be able to have very efficient movement. There has been some successes, obviously. People will tell you previously they could literally spend 2 hours or 3 hours sitting in Beitbridge to exit into Zimbabwe. Now we talk an average of 30 minutes. And you can ask the travelers, not us, so that they can give you proper feedback. You know that the trucks used to stand on the corridor, whether it's N1 or N4 for 2 days, 3 days. But now they will tell you at least from 50-kilometer queue, now we talk about at least an average of between 5 and 10 Ks. And of course, the time spent on the corridor. And you can still ask the private sector if you want the feedback. You'll be able to see the difference. So we have started to do some lot of interventions, but we still need a lot of investment to improve a lot of things. And of course, the other things are sensors. In the vulnerable segments, even when you have drones, it's better to also have some sensors which will be able to give you indication that there is somebody crossing in this particular area. And the sensors with AI must be able to tell us if it is an animal, if it is a person, if it is a vehicle, and the like, so that we are able to do this work better. So there are a lot of things that we are actually looking at, but all of these things are expensive. And that is why South Africa needs to look at possible investment in this particular space so that we can start to do what is supposed to be done in as far as border management is concerned. So those are the two answers to the two questions. And if there is any additions, the colleagues will come through.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner, for those responses. If there are any additions, we can take a few minutes and deal with those. Katlego?
Just a follow-up, that was spotted in News from Africa. Commissioner, please do correct me if I'm wrong, but you said 3 officials were arrested. And just considering the phenomenon of the facilitator, have you been able to identify if these facilitators sometimes work with officials inside the system? And your targeting of these so-called facilitators, one can imagine that when you take away one, another might emerge. So when you say you're breaking that vicious cycle, is it under the understanding that that position of the facilitator would be harder?
Follow up from Tate Mashele? Nothing. Okay, it's fine. Commissioner?
Yeah, so Kata, in terms of your follow-up, let's put it this way. The facilitators work in different ways, and it is a sophisticated enterprise. Let me then start with the easier one. The easier one is when they operate, but they operate outside the port. So when they operate outside the port, they do not need to interact with our officials because it's out of the port. So what do? If you talk about Beitbridge, they will facilitate people through those makeshift boats out of Limpopo River, those facilitators. When they then dock on our side, you will remember they are also still on no man's land. They are not yet at our fence to enter South Africa. So on that basis, they will then start to communicate with people who are supposed to take these people through vehicles into South Africa. In that kind of an activity, they do not necessarily work with our officials. So on that, in that context, we can indicate that that is a bit detached from our officials. Then there is a facilitation that has been, I will say, popular some time back. And they literally facilitate people inside the port. And then what does that mean? What it meant was, before we could change the approach, people will literally walk inside the port of entry. So there was no much access control in the entry into the port. So everybody can walk in. That is why in the port, you go into Beitbridge, you go into Libombo, you go to Maseru Bridge. Inside the port, you will find there are rovers. In other words, people who are just there to come and chill in a way. You will know in Beitbridge there are some shops there and stuff like that. So people will come into the port whilst they are not travelers. So in other words, there will be people who are just roving. So when people would come into the port at that time, then they could easily then become syndicates inside the port, and they unfortunately then corrupt our officials. In that instance, it means The only interaction is going to be between the traveler and the immigration officer in particular, because in health, you just have to be screened for health, so there's nothing you can do. So in immigration, if you don't have a passport or you have an expired passport, then you get facilitated inside the port and you get the money. And then you are able, I mean, the officials get the money and they come through into the country. So that is how it used to be, very much popular. Now, what we then introduced is a very strong access control, meaning now we put in the border guards at the north gate in Beitbridge and the south gate. North gate into Zim, south gate into SA. If you go to Libombo, we put the access control border guards in the east gate in Libombo and of course the west gate on our side. If you go to Masero Bridge, it will be the same. It will be I suppose the south gate and the north gate. You go to Fixburg, is the same. You go to all other port, Kofontein. So we put in the border guards to say, no one enters the port unless they are a legitimate traveler with requisite documents. So what that thing has done, it has reduced the possibility of people without documents to appear before the immigration officer, for instance. Now, if you are a legitimate traveler with a legitimate document, why would you pay somebody? For what? It doesn't make sense. Now, the other thing that we have done was to bring in efficiency in terms of the queue. What used to happen, when people used to queue for 2 hours at the port, they will then pay these people called runners to facilitate them to move quicker. So because of that delay, people will actually pay. But now, we have brought efficiency in the port, there's no need to pay anybody. And that is why you just have to queue and exit. So that also had reduced the crime, or has reduced the corruption. Now, back to your question, 2 officials arrested. What actually happened? It's not 3, it's 2. Now, what happened is, these are the officials who were trying to do exactly the issues that we've been dealing with, whereby a taxi would come and then they try to facilitate. I think in this instance, it was a 15-seater and there were something like 7 that did not actually have documents and they were facilitating them in. But because of the measures that we've put in, we were able to pick them up and they were arrested on the spot. And the most unfortunate part here, colleagues, and I think it's a bit sad, when I checked the social media, somebody was saying, so there was a 61-year-old in the BMA actually arrested. So has the BMA employed a 61-year-old, you know? So, and I think that it's because the person did not know. The BMA integrated staff complement that has been working at the port for all this while. So it's not like BMA in the 2 years they employed a 61-year-old, because I think it was some confusion there. So I think what I wanted to just emphasize, Katleho, on your question is that the facilitators that work outside, meaning the ones that facilitate outside, when we keep arresting them and taking them inland for processing and ultimately going to court and hopefully going to prison, the generating of the other facilitators, they do it on the other side. In other words, because remember, the most of the facilitators, they are on the other side, whether they are on the Mozambican side or they are on the Zimbabwean side. They can still generate them. But with the drone, what we have now started doing, and that is what we have done now, we have now stationed our actual border guards in the areas where they actually come through, to the extent that their enterprise becomes very much useless. What we know, which is a fact, they are likely to move far out of the port. Somebody was telling me that, no, they will move 60 kilometers away from Beitbridge, either west or actually east. Now, the reality of that is, once that happens, we know they will need the corridor to come back and be able to enter the country. And that is where the challenge has been. So that is why, in that instance, we have started intensifying our interface with the Defense Force to be able to cover those areas where they might actually go to. They will keep generating them, we'll keep arresting them. At least it's better than having to deport. Because when you deport, there is no any difference. And by the way, maybe let me use this opportunity, Kataho, with your question to clarify something. I know somebody was saying, but why is BMA talking about the fact that they have drones, they have body cams, they have all of these things, and even showing the media how these things are working and all of those? That particular question was asked on the basis of not necessarily understanding the BMA mandate. Our BMA mandate is to make sure people don't enter the country illegally. Our mandate is to make sure people are facilitated at the port of entry so that they enter the country illegally. Our mandate is not to stop people. Our mandate is to bring people. But it must be people that are supposed to be requisite travelers coming for genuine issues. Our responsibility is not to bring criminals. Our responsibility is not to bring your illicit cigarettes. Now, because of that, we have to tell those that are coming illegally to say, don't try it because we see you. And that becomes a deterrent. So we are not assessed on the number of people we arrest. We are assessed on the number of people who are coming through the port legally. That is how our assessment is. And that is why if one does not understand the mandate, can actually be confused. We are not like police officers who are looking after a criminal who committed a crime. We are to make sure people get facilitated. Those that are going the illegal route, they must not do that. They must come to the legal route. And we know the challenges. They talk about passports in their countries and all of that. And of course, those are the issues that their countries should be able to resolve. But the point I wanted to emphasize is basically to reflect on that issue. So facilitators will keep arresting them. What becomes unfortunate is South Africans who then collude with the facilitators from other countries to drive the people in the country. Those ones, once again, we will definitely continue to arrest them. And this time around, we are going to be doing those impounding of the vehicles. We have slowed down previously on that because we are looking at where are we going to put the vehicles and all of those issues. But we realize that if we don't act very decisively, this thing will continue. So if you pick you up coming with your own, I mean, the other day it was a Mercedes-Benz, a big ML, a very serious machine. 8 vehicles put in the boot, laterally facilitated into the country by a South African. So hence we are saying we are going to take all of those issues and make sure that the people get arrested so that we can start having some bit of impact in the work that we do. Sorted, madam? Great.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think as far as this item is concerned, we are fine. I don't see any other questions, but we are still going to find an opportunity to engage with the Commissioner, I think, for a few minutes before he leaves this building. We will be having that session here or that other site for this building. So on that note, let us transition to the last item where we'll be requesting General Chilembe to give us some vote of thanks. General.
Thank you so much, Program Director. The Commissioner, Border Management Authority, the Deputy Commissioner, Corporate Services, Mayor James Tupana, Assistant Commissioners and other Deputy Assistant Commissioners present, the entire Border Management community, members of the media, and everyone in present. I wanted to say ladies and gentlemen, but I was corrected that these days we don't say it like that. Colleagues, as we conclude today's important engagement, I would like to take this opportunity to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you for your presence, your attention, and your continued commitment on reporting on the border management issues in the Republic. Today's briefing has highlighted the hard work, the dedication, and the resilience of the men and women of the BMA who, under challenging circumstances, ensured the security and the integrity of our ports of entry and the law enforcement areas during this period. We have openly shared both our achievement and the areas that require further improvement. This transparency is a reflection of our ongoing commitment to accountability, innovation, and continuous improvement in how we deliver our mandate as the Border Management Authority. A special word of appreciation goes to our partners across government and the security cluster, whose collaboration was instrumental to the success of our operations. It is only through such partnerships that we can fully realize the vision to secure the border environment. To the media, thank you for your continued interest of our work. Your role in informing and educating the public on matters of border security is critical, and we value the platform you provide to share our progress and challenges with the nation. As a Border Management Authority, we remain resolute in our mission to secure South Africa's borders for development. We aim to protect our sovereignty, our economy, and the safety of all people who reside in this beautiful country. Thank you once again for your support and partnership. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you.
Yeah, think the only thing that I need to say is that we are done, and those who want to engage with the commissioner can do so. Mem Jose will advise us if we need to go that other side or we need to remain here, because I can see the space could be insufficient to accommodate all the media houses. Okay, we'll do it here. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thanks. Bye.